Hi, I'm Pamela, and this is episode 7 of the Fiber Sprite podcast. This podcast is all about knitting, spinning, weaving, and dyeing. Basically, fun things to do with yarn. So we recently got back from about a week away visiting family over the holidays. And so that meant lots of knitting time, both on the airplane and in the car. It was about an 8-hour drive from my husband's family to my family, so it was lots of knitting time. And so I did several things. So I finally finished these socks. So if you've been following the podcast, I took about 6 months to finish the second sock. So I finally finished that. It really, at the point, just needed a little bit of ribbing on the cuff and then the bind off and sewing in ends. But now those are done, so I can finally wear them. Yay! And then I underestimated the amount of time that I would be knitting easy projects and overestimated the amount of time that I would be able to work on more difficult projects that required me to be able to see what I was doing. And so we made an emergency stop to a yarn store in North Carolina on the way, and I bought some more sock yarn. And so it's a very similar color family to the first pair of socks, but heavier on the purples and pinks and just darker overall in value. And it came with a little mini skein of contrasting yarn. So this is the yarn here, and it is something that I have not seen before. The brand is called Dream and Color, and it's missing the other part of the tag, but the fiber is superwash BFL mixed with nylon. It's a little bit thinner than I have been using on some of my other socks, but it's really nice. It's got that sheen that BFL has, and the color is just really, really lovely. So I've been enjoying that, and I've started on the second sock, and I promise that it won't take me 6 months to knit it. And then I had almost all of the pieces for this sweater knit up, and I seamed them one day while we were in the car going hiking. And so for the most part, I'm pretty happy with it. It's a little bit rumpled. The only issue is at the shoulders. You can kind of see how that bunches up right there. And so in my design, I hadn't really thought about how that would curve. So I think this could really benefit from some short rows right here. And so I will be unseaming that and taking it apart and redoing that little part. And that's just part of design work, is experimenting and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and then going from there. So I will be working on that. And then I also, while I was away, worked on the cabling for the band. So I did try this on, and for the most part it fits, but because the band is so wide, it doesn't hold onto my shoulders yet, which is a little bit concerning, but I think that once the band is on, it will be fine. And so I mentioned in the last podcast that I would be changing directions on the cable, and I did that. So you can see that diamond shape right there in the middle. That's where I changed directions on the cable, and that will be at the center back. So when it hangs off my shoulders, the cables will both go in the same direction, so they'll match. So this is just, now I just have to finish this cable and do that detail on the shoulders to fix that, and then that will be done. So when we went on our trip, I did pack a spindle and some fiber to spin, and I was spinning for about 5 minutes before the spindle broke. I was a little disappointed. But I did manage to spin a little bit before we left, and then when we got home, this is Orion's Nebula, which is this colorway right here that's available in the shop. And this was just really fun and bright to spin. I spun this as a fractal spin, and I do have a video tutorial and a blog post that explains how to do a fractal spin. And they are just really fun to do, and this was just a fun, quick little project. So that's done. And then I had a lot of leftover singles. So onto weaving. I have been doing a little bit more weaving now than I had been over the summertime, and so that's been really enjoyable. And I am going to do an unboxing today. So I like to do so let's see what we've got. So this is from Blazing Shuttles. They do custom dye work, and one of the big things that they are known for is pre-painted warps. So a painted warp is a warp that you put on your loom that has been dyed, and usually it's dyed so that there will be subtle stripes in your weaving. So this is the one that I bought. It is cotton, and this colorway is called Horizon. Excuse me, it's called Horizon. So I thought that I would weave a scarf for somebody who's done a lot of work for me this year that has been really helpful. And she came into our office and saw, what did she see? She saw Marine Bloom, which is blues and greens and turquoises. And she held it up and she said, "Oh, these are my colors." And I had spun a skein of yarn of that, and that was the one that she was drawn to. But she's not a knitter, and I wanted to make her something that would be washable. So this is going to be cotton. And most of the year it's quite warm here, so a light cotton scarf is probably going to be just fine. So there's that. And there's actually quite enough in there to make several things, so I might make some other stuff with it as well. And then I also bought a couple of skeins of yarn. This is also cotton, but it's mercerized, so it's got a little bit more sheen to it. And this is called Grass Green. So I thought that they would pair together well. So now I just have to get a loom warped. So if you've been following me on Instagram and Facebook, you will have seen the preparations for this warp. So, and this is also the warp that I shared in the last episode. So it is now on the loom and I'm weaving it. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a couple of different things with this. So I'll just unroll it so that you can see. So this section is going to be tea towels, and each tea towel is about 36 inches long. And so that's what this is right here. It's just a tape measure to tell me when I've gotten to 36, and I just pin it as I go. And then I am doing a couple of tea towels in this bright green color, and then a couple in this chartreuse color, which when it's blended with the other greens, I think it looks like a very bright spring green. So I've got a couple more towels to go, and then I will cut off the loom what I've done, and then I will rethread it so it's more narrow. It just means that I'll double up some threads through the reed, and then I will weave a table runner. So I'll basically have a table runner that matches one of my sets of towels. So that's my weaving for now. And part of this project is sort of to get kind of in the Christmas spirit, and I don't really want things to be super like cliche Christmassy. I just wanted sort of something that you could put out seasonally, or, you know, this could be in the springtime rather than at Christmas. And so this will be hopefully ready pretty soon before I have guests for the holidays. So last but not least, I have a few books to share with you. And the first one is the Mason-Dixon Knitting Field Guide number 13, a masterclass with Kay Fassett. And the premise behind these field guides is that they're small, they're affordable, and they just let you jump in and try new techniques and new ideas in knitting. And so Kay Fassett is really, really productive, both as a knitter and a quilter and an artist in general. And he has really vibrant use of color. And if you've followed Mason-Dixon Knitting, Kay Fassett has played a really big role in their development as knitters and their willingness to play with different ideas, techniques, and colors. And so this was really kind of a dream project for them. And so I was really excited to get it. It has several different projects for a lot of home decor. So there's cushions, there's blankets, there is a scarf and a cowl, and what else? So that's pretty much it. And usually their books have patterns and stories, and this one's really more just patterns, but it's fun to look at, and I might be trying a couple of patterns from this just as a way to play with color in a different way. Could be really fun. So that's this book. And then this one is really interesting. It's called Motonai, The Fabric of Life, Lessons in Frugality from Traditional Japan. So in Japan, before the 1800s, cotton was practically non-existent. So anybody who had access to cotton would have been very, very wealthy. And most of the fabric that people wore for their clothes was made from other things. So they used elm bark, basically a lot of bast fibers. They also used wisteria, and paper was used, as well as kudzu, which, if you're from the American South, you're like, oh, finally something to do with kudzu. And one of the interesting things was that they said that kudzu makes a very shiny fabric, so it has a nice sheen to it. So the book is, it shares different garments and what the fabric looks like under a microscope, as well as each spread has a couple of different pictures, and each spread is based on one type of fiber. And so that was really interesting. And the other part of it was that because fabric was so precious and was so difficult to create, because they had to make these bast fibers, there was a lot of work put into the preparation of them, that nothing went to waste. So it talks a little bit about boro, which is basically what's shown on the back cover here, which is mending. And they also talked about sashiko and zanshi ori, which is a technique that I have played with a little bit, not to this level of skill, but the idea that you can use your leftover yarns and piece them together into a larger thing. So this was a really interesting little book. It's based on a museum exhibit, and it was recommended to me by Barbara Seuss, who does Tamari balls. And there really isn't a lot written on some of these techniques, so she suggested that because people are always asking about the techniques that are in this book. And then last but not least, this just came in the mail yesterday. So this is Fiber Shed by Rebecca Burgess. And she was essentially the person who started what we're calling the Fiber Shed movement in the textile world. And so she lives in California, and she decided that she was going to have a 100-mile wardrobe for a whole year. And so she only bought fiber and cloth that had been produced in her local area. It's kind of like the idea behind a watershed. If you live in a certain area, you live near some sort of river that then impacts other bodies of water. So she was, making that point about textiles. And so this book talks a lot about that and some of the other people who are involved in that movement. So I'm excited to sit down and take a look at this book. So that's it for today. It was a pretty short episode. I really appreciate all of you tuning in, and I will catch you next time. Bye.